Teaching my father how to love is the story about my father, Ishmael Mayo de la Rocha, who unexpectedly passed away 7 years ago and started me on this journey of self-discovery and healing. It's the story of a young child who left everything that he knew in a small rural village in Chihuahua, Mexico, and unwillingly traveled to the United States. Growing up in East Los Angeles, my father got actively involved in the Chicano movement of the 1960s and 1970s, helping to establish Mecha, the largest Latino student organization in the country, and later becoming a beloved community college professor who taught tens of thousands of students across the globe. The story takes place during my father's last 5 days alive, while an unwanted trip to the hospital has him reflecting on his life and his inability to be emotionally vulnerable with his family and ultimately himself. I always intended to write this book because I wanted to share my father's story with the world. I wanted to do my part in documenting a series of historical moments so that future generations could know about the sacrifice and commitment of everyday people just like my father, folks that we will never know who gave so much of themselves to create the world that we now live in. But if I'm being truthful, I wrote this book because I wanted to understand why it was so hard for my father to tell me that he loved me. In a time when it's so hard to find authentic stories about fathers and sons, let alone Chicano fathers and sons, I wanted to write a book to help us men understand how outdated and inherited definitions of manhood are not only toxic, but ultimately destroy the ones that we love the most. This is more than just a historical memoir. This is a story about us, a story about a growing movement for racial and gender justice, not just in the United States, but across the world. It's a story about the violence of patriarchy. And it's a story about how all of us who believe in our collective liberation can indeed heal the world if we first learn how to heal ourselves. In a time when we're grappling with multiple pandemics, from COVID-19 to war to poverty, this story is needed now more than ever. My hope is that teaching my father how to love will help us reconsider and reevaluate our own lives, help us remember about the power, the healing power of love and forgiveness, allow men the permission to be vulnerable, to confront our worst fears, our deepest wounds, and maybe, just maybe in the process, the words that we've always been too afraid to say. Teaching my father how to love, I hope, will allow us to answer that eternal question of, what do I want to leave behind?